I've been scrolling YouTube recently and realized there's no complete guide on all of the AI nodes in N8N and decided to make one. There will be no script edits or cuts. I will explain in my own words, in plain English, everything that you need to know. I manage a team of 8 people, 6 of which are developers, and I'm not technical. That's why I'm pretty sure you will get everything. If you want me to create the most detailed guide on building conversational agents in N8N, going node to node, explaining literally everything, put the like button. If we get 300 likes on this video, next week I will publish that. Now let's go to the N8N. Once you open the interface and sign up, you will create the workflow. The first step is to create a trigger. Because this is a tutorial, I think the chat message trigger will be the best. It means that when we are sending a message in this interface chat, this message will be passed to this node here, and we can manipulate this message however we want. Now, then when we click here, plus or here, you'll see that on the top we have the Advanced AI tab. Obviously, this is the most popular tab inside N8N, and N8N actually got so popular because of their agentic framework and AI agent step. The very first thing that you can get access to is the AI templates. N8N has a pretty big library of workflows and templates that you can use, but I would personally not recommend you to use them. When I was learning, it was a while back, I actually never found a use case in terms of learning a specific action if I'm downloading the workflow from the internal app marketplace, because it doesn't provide enough context. Usually what I would do, I would find a YouTube video of people sharing, hopefully it for free, downloading that, and then following through the video with the template. Now I have my free resource hub. You'll find the link in the description, but the one prompt is obviously this is the most advanced system that we use and you can resell. So this is paid, but we always have the free resources that you can explore. Now, so let's start with the AI agent step. Once we land into the step, you'll see that it pops up in the canvas and we have 4 connections. So this is the output connection. This is basically what happens after something was generated in this node. So let's keep it off for now. And we have the chat model, memory, and tool. Chat model is, pretty descriptive here. You're choosing the model that you are going to use. For our scenario, we're going to use OpenAI. N8N recently added the Open Router chat model. Basically, this is, the app where you need to sign up, and then you can choose all the models, almost like 300 plus different models throughout one interface. And what it is usually used for is for the dynamic routing, when you are basically, on the first step, identifying the type of the question or request, and then the AI identifies what model to run. So let's say here you give the agent multiple options. So if this is the type of the question, you use this model, this model, this model. Of course, you can have separate agents here that will use their own models, or you can have one agent if it's suitable, and this agent will have different models. Anyways, so there are like technical guides on how to set everything up on YouTube, so I don't think that you actually we need to focus on that in this video. So that's why let's do the OpenAI here. Create an account, pretty easy. Then we're gonna set up the model. Let's use 4.1 and we are good to go with the model. Now, we need to set up the memory and the tool. I want to set it up right now so that you understand how it is done. If something is not understandable, you can ask in the comments, or you can go and try to find a YouTube video that goes in depth into the memory setup inside the N8N. For 95% of all the builds that we do inside my agency, we use Supabase as the memory, and within the one prompt for all of our systems that are powered by the N8N, we are also using the Supabase Postgres for the memory. So let's actually set it up. If you click here, you have a lot of different options. Again, guys, now I want you to understand one thing. I was recently posting a video on the YouTube, which is 3-minute long. It didn't get traction that I think it deserves, so you should go and watch it. And this is the most important video that you would watch. Basically, there I'm explaining the shiny object syndrome within the AI space, and I feel like you guys need to hear that every day. Okay, like you do not need to learn what these things do. Okay, there's so many options, and when I hear from people like, I want to be proficient in N8N, okay, that's awesome. Then, if this is the goal, you need to know everything. And I do deeply believe that. Like, you want to be the specialist. But you are limiting yourself to the developer route or the freelancer route. It is not bad, okay? And I don't think that if you're going entrepreneurial route with the consultancy or agency, you'll make more money. No, not necessarily, because it's harder. What I'm saying is that you need to be aware what you're trying to do. If your goal is to either build it for your business, so you need to focus on just the best things that are on the market and the most popular solutions, or if you're trying to build an agency or consultancy business, again, you better focus on getting one solution, make it work, and then productizing it and sell and resell to all other businesses. That's why when it comes to the memory, just use Postgres. Now, we can use the simple memory here, which is the memory that is stored locally. So here, as you can see, we have the session ID. At the session ID, it is like the identifier. It's actually also used when we're dealing with the Postgres. So it's like, if you think about this, there are a lot of different conversations that are happening. And let's say that we have somewhere, right? So the database, we're going to use, again, the Supabase, but it doesn't really matter. Like, let's say there's an Excel spreadsheet that stores all the utterances from the bot, from the user responses. And you need to understand when this specific user is messaging us, how to get only this in this. That's why you need the identifier, right? So what could be the identifier? Because if you define it below like that, right? So let's say this will be identifier. Okay, sure. It's I mean, this is going to work locally if you're doing it here, not a problem. But if you're, instead of the chat widget, if you're using, let's say, the webhook, you are you're gonna use it's gonna be static, right? Okay, so this one is going to be static. So all these parameters, all these utterances, will have the same user ID. That's why you need it to be dynamic. Now, this is I'm sorry for getting such a deep depth in a very simple thing, but you do not understand how important this is. Okay, let me give you an example. So again, we have the one prompt. So the one prompt is, this, whatever, sales agent in the box that you can resell. Now, it is built on top of the high level, right? And when you're, getting into the high level, you basically, let's say when someone messages you, there is a new chat created and the new contact is created. So one contact can have one chat, right? And there's chat history. So let's say we need to power this chat. So if someone messages you on WhatsApp or the live chat or the SMS, we need to identify the user. what we're doing, because we are powering the high level interface, and it could be like any interface, it doesn't matter, like HubSpot, Salesforce, custom Airtable, Lovable, whatever. So if you are building a CRM like experience, you'll have the contact will have a unique identifier. If you are powering it with the N8N agent, right, that is generating the response on the user questions, you will use the you need to use the identifier, because all these people will message you, and there will be one database that is storing all the occurrences and responses. So that's why you have, within this contact, you have a contact ID in the, let's say, URL. So you are using this contact ID and passing it to the N8N. And here you are defining it below, and let's say this is whatever session ID, whatever. So now you are passing this contact ID from your CRM into the N8N, and within this this memory database, you will have it, right? That's why it's very important concept, because it doesn't matter what you're trying to build if you are building something conversational, not necessarily. So if you're dealing with a simple workflow, linear workflows, automations, or the automations that are triggered not by user typing something, it doesn't matter if it's the customer or if it's like customer facing agent or internal company agents, you need to use the identifier. Anyways, so this is stored locally. Okay, you can use it for testing. That's great. Now, let's use something that you would use. You would use Postgres. Guys, I'm not technical again, so let me try to explain it in my own words. I was actually asking AI to explain it to a 10-year, like I am the 10-year-old, so that I can explain it to you guys. But okay, so let's read it together. So where is it? So the N8N is the tool, okay? And the Postgres, right? So the Postgres is the database system. It's basically like a storage, okay? It's like something storage, like the framework, whatever we call it. And the Supabase is basically cloud-hosted version of Postgres. Now, like Supabase is a tool that where you can deploy the cloud version of Postgres, because like Postgres can be deployed using different things. It's more like a system, right? It's like a framework. Now, please don't hate me on that. Don't quote me on that. I like, for this type of the things, we have developers. I'm not, I've not been, coding and building SQLs for any like at all, but this is just how I understand it. Now, so what we can learn from that is that, okay, so the Postgres is the system that we're using, okay? So, but we need a front end, okay, for the Postgres, okay, SQL. And this is the Supabase. Again, I am pretty sure there are like tens of different things, and there are different advantages and disadvantages for all, and you may have people in the comments saying, no, Supabase sucks, you need to use something. No, you don't, okay? Please, if you're watching this video, you don't. Like, just use Supabase, because for those who need it, like, they are not gonna watch me, okay? They will laugh when I say that the Postgres is the database system, and they'll leave the video, okay? Now, so when we are connecting the chat memory here, okay, we need to create the credentials, okay? I have two. Let me like delete this one, okay? And let's create one from scratch. So we need like host, database, user, whatever. So we need different things to connect it to the Postgres or Supabase. So now let's go to Supabase. You go to the Supabase, you sign up, okay, you choose the plan. Then you go to your, all projects, you create a project, you choose the organization, your, let's say, YouTube test, you're choosing the size depending on what you need. Again, micro for everything, for all the tasks is good. Now the password, okay, so let's actually generate the password for now in whatever region you're in. So create a project. Okay. So this will take some time because I told you guys that there will be no cuts. Let's actually wait. While we are waiting, let's exit this node. We'll also have an option to add the tools. And the tools could be classified by two categories again. So this is just for the very basic understanding. So if you have, the agent and you have the tools, so you have the like knowledge base and you have all other tools. Okay, it's just easier to understand. So if you want the agent to operate on your documents or on any information about the company, you need to set up the vector knowledge base. Okay, go to KB. If you want the agent to have access to other software app, if you want it to make like API calls or whatever, or do some actions, you would do you would use the tool. Okay, so for the tools, we're not gonna set them up. There are like a bunch of them depending on your needs. Pretty straightforward. But we are going to set up the knowledge base also through the Supabase, but let's cover it a bit later. Now, the project has been almost set up. We are, it's updating a few things in the backend. So if you go to the Postgres here, let's actually, again, create the credentials. We need the host, database, and all these things. So if you go here in your whatever preview project overview, you have the connect button on top. When you click this button, you have a lot of different things. So on the type, we're using PSQL. Okay. Again, don't quote me on why we're using that. I guess because we're setting up the Postgres. And what we need is the session pooler. It's very important because we are dealing with a memory, right? So we need the session pooler. So you have the URL with all, not the URL, like you have all the details here. But if you click this little button here, you have all the credentials that you need. So essentially you have a host, you copy it, you go here and you paste it here. So you get the port and you paste the port here. It's usually always the same. So the database Postgres, the user is different. So database is Postgres, the user is this. And now we need the password. Again, if you set up the custom password, it's good. If you don't, if you go to the project settings, here you have a reset project. So you can, database, reset database password. Let's generate one, copy. No, I probably didn't reset it. Sorry. Reset, copy, reset. Good. We go here. We put the password, save, and now it's all successfully connected. So now you have a Postgres memory for your AI agent built on Supabase. If you go to the table editor, you will not see anything. But we technically need to see the table where, like the database, where everything will be stored. And by the way, let's actually rename this to YouTube AI nodes test. Okay. But in order for it to create the database to store everything, you need to send a message, because if you here you'll see that there's a session ID and we're getting the session ID automatically from the chat trigger, and we're having the table name. This is basically the table name that will be first created, okay, and then it will be just updated. So this is what we're gonna use. Context window length, very important. This is for how long you want to save the conversation. So let's say you want to save the 5, 4, 10, 100 user utterances. Now, when we're dealing with memory, usually, and because we specialize in like my agency, one prompt, and this channel is general specialized around conversational agents. We try to give an infinite amount of utterances saved. Okay, here, put it here. So the conversational length, because we want to have because we want the agent to have the full context. Now, it could be done differently. For example, if we're using this, like what we're using within the one prompt system, is that after each message is generated, guys, don't worry about that. I'm just gonna like reference some things here. We're not gonna go over this, but I want to make it easier for you to understand like the different possibilities. So technically, after each message is generated through the different agents, what we're doing, we are getting the memory, right? So we're like essentially getting the memory from the Supabase, and we are putting, and let's say like there's some memory, and that's why we're like having the chat. So we have the chat memory manager, don't worry about that. So we have the code block, whatever. So we're essentially creating a list, like file with the user bot. So this like list of interactions. And then we are putting it inside this management system. So since we're using high level, like, and you can use any CRM, right? So I'm trying to make you think what you can do. So instead of having everything in Supabase, which I think you need, and we still do, that's why we still provide, usually here the length of like 30 to 50. You can like get this and put it in some custom fields or notes of the contact. Then when the contact sends a message, this, like, let's say the note with all the interactions is passed to the webhook here. And you can like essentially, instead of like you would still use it, but also you can like, if you have maybe a window context, window length is like 2, you can technically here, if you're passing the conversation history in one of the input fields, you can say, okay, like this is the like reference the history. Okay, do you understand what I mean? So it's not necessarily needed to use that. But if it's like, sorry, it's like, again, it's only if you're using a third layer where you're like storing all the contacts, where you're having the dashboard, the pipeline, all the interactions, connections, and all these things. But if you're building locally, like, I mean, so technically you can use the Airtable, but it's gonna be it is the same thing. Yeah, sure. So you can say Eugene is the same thing, because like technically, if like, okay, so you're creating that, but what's the difference if you have the simple the table inside Supabase, the Postgres, and it will also have this, but it's just gonna be randomly picked like that. And then when you are retrieving that like through here, it's only gonna pull up the relevant cells with the data using this session ID. Yeah, sure. But because we're using it differently now, like you can picture, if you're not only setting up the conversational agent, but you're also powering it up with voice agent, if you're like having multiple channels, if you might want to provide this contact to another agent, so like you can now manipulate this data. Anyways, so there are like a lot of different options. Okay, so if we try to send a message right now, I think it's all connected. So define below, we don't need it. We have a connected chat trigger node. It's all good. So let's open the chat. Let's say hello. Okay. As you can see, this was updated, and we did 2 actions. So they load the memory and save the contact. So here, as you can see, the table was populated with this information. So now if we say my name is Eugene and I like apples, I like cars, do you know what fruits. I like. And by the way, for the testing, because I actually faced this at the beginning of my journey, like this gimmicky thing a few times. I was like, okay, so how do I test it? I say, my name is Eugene. I like apples. And here I could say, do you know my name? And I would say, okay, it will work. So if it says that it's Eugene, it will work. But in the very last message, it said that I'm Eugene, right? So it's like, you need to ask something that is not referenced in the last message. So should pull up the information that I like apples. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. So, and by the way, so if you want to restart this, I'm sure you know that, you just click here and you are ready to go from the very beginning. You will have a different session ID, right? So here, when you're starting the chat, because you're referencing the session ID, now this session ID will not pull this information up, and it will be different when you're resetting the actual chat within the N8N. Okay? So the last thing that we are going to do regarding this AI agent is setting up the knowledge base. In order to set it up, you would use as you can see here, we have different vector stores. There's so many things that could be said about the vector store. And now this is more in depth compared to the memory. And I do believe that if you like with memory, it's pretty straightforward, and I advise you to just go with the regular, like the Postgres Supabase. Now with the vector store, it's a bit different. For again, probably 70% of the cases, now it's not 95. For 70% of the cases, the projects that we built, we're using Supabase vector store. But there are use cases when you're working with different types of the documents where you might use different ones. And there has been enormous amount of, not enormous, okay, don't quote me on that again, a lot, okay, just because the AI agent space is still relatively new. There has been a lot of the research done on kind of the RAG, the best ways to retrieve the information, especially when you're working with like different, type of the documents. I would say that I'm planning to create like a video similar type of that, in plain English, in my own words, when we're using, what vector store and how we actually like update and manipulate it. But as I said, for you, probably 80-90% of the case you'll just use Supabase. That's why I'm going to show it to you right now. So to use just Supabase, this popped up, so this Supabase vector store tool, and you need to again set up the new credential because you'll not have it. So let's do that. We can use the very same project on the Supabase. What you will do is you can create the table, but it's not needed. You will go to the project settings, okay, and you would use the data API. So we have the URL here, and in the project API keys, you have the service role secret. So you're getting this URL here, you copy it, and you paste it as a host. You then reveal the service role, you copy it, go here, and you paste it. Now you created the connection. But unfortunately, this is not it, because it's not gonna work like with the memory, because memory is automatically updated every time the user sends a message, and it automatically creates the table within Supabase. So what we need to do here is we can open the docs, right? And if we scroll down here, you will see kind of all the details that you would want. But what you can also do is if you go into the master node, right, not in the credentials, because we already created it. So in the Supabase vector store, you open the docs here. This will explain like certain things. Again, you don't need it for the most part. You have here the quick start for setting up your vector store. And as you can see, we have the SQL type of the scary code here. We copy it, we go to our Supabase, we go to the SQL editor, you paste it, run, gonna wait for a few seconds, success, no rows, return. If we now go to the tables editor, you'll see that the documents table was populated with content, metadata, embeddings. Okay, so if we close this, go here. Now we're choosing our account. There are a lot of different like options that you can choose from. Again, planning to create a separate video on the knowledge base. I'm not gonna cover it here. Retrieve document is a tool for AI agent because this is literally what we're using, and this is, by the way, in 95% of the cases, this is what you are going to use. Here we're gonna call it a knowledge base tool. Run. Let's say run this tool when you need to get information from our knowledge base. In the table name, we are going to choose the documents table, the one that was populated here. And on the limit here, if you see, this is how many vector chunks you will retrieve. Now, again, so I don't want to make this video like the most advanced guide on the knowledge base or on the vector stores, but essentially, if you think about this, you have chunks of documents, right? And the way it works is that it chunks this document into the chunks, right? So into the different chunks. And when you are calling this knowledge base, it finds the most, relevant chunks, and it, output you like, let's say 3 chunks. And then based on these 3 chunks, you generate a response. Hope this, clear. And just know that more chunks you provide, not necessarily more accurate responses you're gonna get. This is a huge confusion within this space sometimes that I see. It's more like more context the agent will have. So instead of like 3 type of the contacts, it will have, all this, so to have like 4, let's say, and then it will generate a read line. The problem with that is that, let's say if you have a lot of the data, and if you like here, technically, call 20 chunks, besides the fact that because each chunk has like a certain amount of characters, all this piece of data will be passed to the LLM model to generate a response. So you will not waste, so you will spend more tokens. So more chunks you have, more tokens you spend. And it might seem like, okay, more context, better. But if you think about this, like think about yourself when you're reading, and this is a very funny thing with health space, like by hacking, it's like there are literally tens of different opinions on the same topic. It's very hard to choose which one is the right one. We don't have opinions here, of course, because we're like dealing with the straight data. It's either it's correct or not. What I'm saying is that when you're having too much info and place AI too much info to this AI, if it's not needed, especially, you may face some hallucination problems. So usually it depends. Like 3 to 5 is enough. 3 to 5 is enough. We never like went above 5 and never went below 2. So usually it's 3 to 4. Okay. So let's put 3 here. Include metadata. We needed to make sure that the documents have the metadata here, and because we can use the query as well as the metadata filter. We're gonna look at this in a few seconds when I'm gonna upload the documents to this knowledge base, but just know that This is the option for now. Okay. And this is it. So when we connect it to the tool, we also need to create an embedding. Now, again, just think about this as a model that is going to do all the work. OpenAI is usually the way to go. So you don't need to play around with this. 3 small is good enough. And now you're good to go. So if you save it, run the chat, what is your company name? It is not gonna tell us anything, first, because there's no information in the knowledge base, and second, because the knowledge base, by the way, was not ran. So what I think we're missing is so we have to get the information about our company or products. Run this tool when you need to get information about our products or this tool, or about our company or products. And let's actually, in the agent step, let's specify the system message. Your helpful assistant, when user asks a question, run the knowledge base tool, something like that. Usually it is not needed when you are dealing with simple queries, but because we're not getting the response, so let's actually try to send it again. Now, this time, the knowledge base was ran, and it's like obviously like hallucinating OpenAI because we don't have anything within our documents knowledge base. So here's how we can import the data. Yeah, sure, you can do it manually, or you can use a lot of different already pre-built automations and workflows within the N8N. Let me show you. It seems like a hard route, but it's actually very straightforward. So if you go to the Flowise is another low-code LLM builder. So you would sign up. It's free. You'll create an account. Then you can like literally follow that. So you can go to the document stores and you would create a new store here. So this is like one of the stores that I have. Here, you'll have it and you will not have any information. So this is like basically, think about this as a store of information, okay? That's it. So it's like, it's a folder. It's a folder where you will upload the info, like Google Drive. Think about it that way, okay? So we need to upload the info here. So how? In Google Drive, you can literally just drag and drop. So here you need to add a document loader. And this is where it becomes interesting because you can upload the data to this folder in a lot of different ways, right? So from API scroller to, to like JSON file, to text files, to whatever. So you can use the web scraper, which is internal here. But if you are scraping, serious like websites, I would suggest you to use the Firecrawl. But in our case, let's go something like apple.com. Let's literally do the Control-A, Control-C. Go here. We type text. We have the plain text and text file. Plain text. That's good. This is the text that we just got from Apple. Okay. Now this is very important. And like you can process with, it's not needed, what I'm going to show you now, but I want you to understand it. Usually we like to use one knowledge base and filter documents through the metadata, okay? So you can technically have different, within even one project, you can have different like tables as a, knowledge bases for different documents. But to make it easier for everyone, for the companies, to manage if we are not managing it ourselves, and to also our, let's say, one prompt license holders, is because we're like providing everything built in. So as you can see, we have like different agents, but there's like a spider web of connections. Don't worry about that. But we also only have one knowledge base, okay? And this knowledge base is getting filtered through the metadata. So we are only getting the documents that are relevant to us. Again, so this will be discussed in the in-depth knowledge-based video, but what I want to show you is, let's say we will create a key, right? So the key, literally say key, and in the key, the value, let's call it like the meta, so let's call it like YouTube, okay? Let's call it a YouTube. So the key value equals YouTube, okay? So all the chunks that will be created from this text will be marked with this metadata. So then we do the tag splitter, recursive for the most part, usually keeping everything the same. And if you preview the chunks, so now we have 10 chunks, okay? And at the end, you'll see that there is a key, YouTube. So now we click process. It's getting processed. It's done here. So options, upsert chunks. Now, so again, let's say this is the Google folder, right? And now you need to put it to N8N. Now, again, so there are like so many different ways to do that. Like you can set it up within the N8N to have it all automated with a Google Drive. Usually this is what people do. You can use it like that. You get like whatever, right? So it's up to you. This is, if you're like doing it manually, this is, also a really good way if you're like playing around, especially like testing and seeing which one works. So now you have this text. It was already splitted into the chunks. Okay, so just basically you need to get these chunks and upload it into our Supabase. So you'd go to the options, upsert chunks. And now, so this is where you need to configure the things, OpenAI embeddings. So you basically, create the credentials, again, small. You don't need to do anything here. In the credentials, you'd create the Supabase through the API key, Supabase project URL, table name, documents, because like you're referencing, can I create any credentials? You're specifying the actual project, right? So this is the project ID. And then you are, by the way, this is not it. So that's why what we can do, you'd get this ID and you can just place it here. Again, copy this link and you're good to go. Table name, documents, because we have this as documents. Query name, match documents. If you remember from here, when we're specifying the query name, this is what we're replacing here. Okay, so match documents, and we don't need anything. So now let's click upsert. You're gonna save the configuration so that you don't need to redo everything from scratch. And by the way, I think I actually forgot to place the API key here. So pretty understandable, because this is let's actually create a new one from scratch. So credentials name, the Supabase API key. Let's put it project ID. So API to have a public API here. Can I use it? That add main. This is actually this one. For the project, this is what we're gonna use. We're gonna upsert it and we're good to go. So the 10 records were upsorted. So now if you go to the table editor, you'll see that these chunks were uploaded here. Okay? If you go to the N8N now, you don't necessarily need to place it, because here you can see that there is a key and the key is a YouTube. So technically, let's remove it for now. If we save it, open the chat, clear it, what products do you sell? It's going to call the knowledge base, because the knowledge base has the information from the Apple website. It will say that whatever, Apple, iPhone, Mac, all these things. Okay? But let's say you would have the reason why we're doing the metadata and why we're using metadata is because, like, let's say you would want to call only when someone asks about the products. You do not want to call the information about the refund policies or the company information or the technical documentation. You just want the product information. And here you would do, like product info, right? So you would set something up here. And you would go here into the Supabase, you would say query name match, methodology filter. So the key would be the key, and the value would be product info. So now you would only pull up the information from the knowledge base that has this key. Okay? And again, as I said, the reason why we're using it within our main flow is that because depending on the agent, we are setting up the metadata to the general, for example, agent. And here we're setting up the metadata to the lead nurturing agent. And depending on the agent type, we are retrieving the different type of this set of documents from the same knowledge base, from the same table. Okay? Now you are pretty much set with the AI agent. The last thing regarding this specific node I want to discuss is in the settings, all the default settings, which are, by the way, relevant for all of the nodes, right, that are involved, the AI-based nodes. Always output data. It means that if you are running some sort of specific scenario where the AI can result in not outputting anything, which usually again not happens, you can put it on. Execute once when you have a loop of steps, and instead of running it every time, you would run it only once, again almost never using. Retry and fail, this is very important. It is not used that much within the agent step because you're relying, the most common way it can fail is when there's like a problem with the API request to the LLM. If you're working with OpenAI, almost never happens. So, but if it does, you can retry here, and how many times you want to retry and what's the time interval. Okay. Then, if there's an error, so let's say there's a fail, you retry it multiple times, and then what you want to do, you can actually continue to the same to the next node, or you can continue using the error output. Pretty self-explanatory. The nodes is this is the node, okay, just for your developers or the team. If you display it on the flow, you'll see that you have it below the agent here. Okay, so this is pretty much it regarding this step. So let's remove this and go into the next one. The next one is the OpenAI. The OpenAI is like the most probably used AI node within the N8N. This is just the node that is pre-built with the OpenAI endpoints that you can send. So you don't need to basically like create an HTTP request and set all these parameters yourself. Even though, of course, you need it for like some things. Like, for example, right now, depending on when you watch the video, OpenAI released their image generation APIs, the new ones, and it is not yet available through the OpenAI module. It's gonna be in a few weeks, I think. So yeah, I mean, you can message a model here. You set up the credentials, resource, so what you're inputting the text, okay, messaging the model from, you're choosing the from list, let's say the 4.1, and then the prompt is hello, this is the prompt, answer the user question. Usually for the most part, you would, let's say, if we create it here, you would set it up into the user question. So in order to do that, so if we say hi, it's gonna do that. So if we run the expression here, you would put just the chat input. this is how it's usually done, because the instructions are done using the system prompt. So if you know, let's say the user, this is what the user says, hi, and you are dynamically generating it. And within the prompt, you would say, put the system prompt. So you are a helpful assistant that is doing X, Y, and Z. Okay. Pretty self-explanatory. Simplifying the output, usually you say yes so that it's more clean, and output content as JSON. Now, this is very commonly used by our team. There are other options that you can use within the N8N that are like specifically designed for that, but yeah, for the most part, this is what we use. So let's say that you are generating the response, right? And the response is, 3 lines of text. You need to, you don't want to have like this text, right? So like text, you don't need it. So you need to have like a JSON type of the object, okay? So you need like JSON object with certain things. What you can do, in what was always, happening for the past, 2 years, right after, APIs, OpenAI APIs got introduced, we're saying, hey, you'd say, you must respond in JSON format, never respond with a simple text, right? So you would prompt AI, and you would usually do it in the assistant. So you would assistant, and you'd say, I always output in JSON format, and you would like do it there. In 90%, 95% of the cases, depending on the model that you would use, it would work. But there are still some hallucinations what's happening. That's why most popular agent platforms added their JSON structured output. It's basically doing essentially like on their backend, just reprompting a little bit, that is only returning the JSON format. So it will not return that, it will like return that in the JSON. But in order to do that, you need to specify what type of the JSON that you would return. So you'd like still do this type of the prompt, either in the system or as the assistant, as from the first person, like I do whatever, so to let the assistant know how it should behave, and you would turn it on. Okay. Then when it comes to the other options like frequency penalty and all these things, they're very granular depending on depending on what you're building. I don't want to go in depth into each one of that because it really depends on what you are building, but for the most part, you would be ready to go for everything. So usually we can, output randomness, temperature. This is like the only setting that you would want to replace. So when you're, let's say, outputted the JSON, you would set it up between 0.1 to 0.4, depending on, again, because like if you set it 0.1, awesome, it's gonna follow the script, and in 99.999% it will output the JSON, awesome. But because you're like limiting the temperature, the actual response within the JSON might be, a bit tricky. So you need to balance that. Okay. And we're ready to go. So by the way, on that side, so let's say here, as you can see at the end of the flow, before responding to the webhook, this is what we do. Essentially, we are getting the message that was generated and splitting it into the JSON. We do specify, hey, this is the JSON format that we're expecting, message 1, message 2, because we have, just text here. So in this variable, we have like a chunk of text, and we're like asking it to split it into the multiple JSON parts. And here you see that the JSON is actually enabled. Yeah, we have it all in the one prompt because, in a single prompt, but as a user, but we're not having the actual input from the user. We're just analyzing the reply that was already generated. So it is all good. Now, you can connect the same tools here and, use them. You can do almost everything, but if you notice, there is no memory. So you cannot directly connect a memory, like Supabase memory, to this. And by the way, I would want us to keep that in case we need it. So let's actually remove this. And here, let's put the OpenAI message model. Now, but so usually this is the step that is used in the middle of the flows. Like, for example, as we have here, right? So it's like the main steps are obviously the agents. But in the middle, so we have this thing. You can technically reference, right? So if you're like passing the memory to the webhook here, or you can, use the chat memory, you can chat memory manager to get the messages, to retrieve the messages, right? You can retrieve the messages, you can connect the memory, you can retrieve the messages, and then you can like reference this output in here. So technically, like you can say in the system, here is the conversation history. Okay, so what I'm saying is that there is a workaround on how to like input the memory into the OpenAI node, but if you need it, probably you need the agent step, but not all the time. Not all the time. So it really depends. Okay. Now, so we are good to go with that. So let's move into the basic LLM chain. For the context, what we just discussed, this is 85% of all the things that you're gonna use. Maybe if we're gonna add the extractor, this is 90%. So these things you'll rarely see, mostly because they are not outdated, but because they're like more simple and because you can achieve the same things with the agent node. And why use that if you can use agent node? But there are some use cases. And here's one of them. The basic LLM chain is, so if you connect it here, so you connect the model. It's all good. By the way, there is no memory, but you can provide a memory, but you don't want that. The most so as you can see, like it's very simple. So you provide a chat trigger here, and but usually you would define it below. So you do the expression, and you would say, you would do the instructions here, right? And like here is the thing you need to analyze. Now, this is not a great example in the chat node because it's never used in the actual, as a in the conversational path. But when it is used, when you need to generate the response, but in order for this response to be generated, you need to run a few iterations and you need to chunk it down into the chain. Disclaimer. Yes, the newer model that are getting released every month are adding this multi-step rethinking approach, okay? That are doing the chaining on their backend. But if you want to have the most granular control, if you're a nerd, so you'd probably want to use it. Now, so let me give you an example. Let's say that you need to generate an article. So for the article, you need, let's say a headline, you need keywords, you need first paragraph, you need the hook paragraph, and you need the content, and then you need the CTA, something like that. Probably a bad article, but whatever. Yeah, sure. So you can ask, you can use AI agent step and ask it to generate the article. And by the way, output it. So system, sorry, or you would use, no, so depends. So, or you would not use the agent step for that. You'd probably use the OpenAI. You would, message a model, and you would, use the output as a JSON thing. And you would say, hey, output the JSON with a structure. So key headline, key body, key hook, key CTA, and all those things, right? So it's going to be a huge JSON. And then you would use this JSON and you can map all this values separately into, different fields of other, software where you're like publishing it up. But depending on the complexity of the article, or article is an example, on the complexity of the output that you want, you might want to let AI to focus only on one thing and create a chain. So basically you would want to say, hey, create this. So this will be one module. So this will be, this chain. So here, create the title for this article. And you would, let's say you're, getting somehow the topic of the article here through somewhere. And you say, okay, so, this is the topic. Okay. Now you would say, hey, on the next step, based on this topic and based on, maybe some parameters here, generate the keywords. Then so do you got the idea? So it's it's going as a chain step by step. So this way AI has easier time going through everything. And sure, you can only technically the base version would be for you here to provide this information that I want to generate article about flowers. And here you would say this is the input. So a user wants to generate the article about flowers. So generate the keywords. And then this is the user wants to generate an article about flowers, generate the the hook. This is the step one. The step two, level 2, would be for you to actually provide the previous context. So this is generate the keywords and the user wants to get the keywords for the article that is about flowers, and this is the title. So here, generate the hook for the article about flowers. This is the title, and these are the keywords. So it's it's going step by step, but it's not thinking to generate the content or the CTA because it is not there yet, right? But for 95% of the use cases, you can get away with a very, very good model like O3 or something, or DeepSeek, or any other kind of newer type of the logical thinking model. So yeah, but just keep in mind that this is an option within the N8N. The next one is the information extractor. By the way, we are using it a lot. And if you can see it here, we are using it at least twice. So this is one. Now, let me explain. The text is where let's connect it to the node. And this is the text is where you usually, this is the text that you want to analyze, right? So here you would say here, but you want to provide it more context. So user input, like that. Again, because of the specifics of my work, we're dealing with the conversational things. We need to provide the context. So even if we're extracting data from the conversation, right? So the account number, user email, phone number, name, whatever. The information not necessarily will be in the input, but will be in the conversation history. So we need to provide the conversation history here, okay? But there's no way to, connect it. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So here, this is what we are doing. Here, as you can see, we're saying, hey, user input, but here's the chat history. And chat history is stored in the custom variable. And the custom variable is we're getting in the chat memory manager. Then we're cleaning it through the code. And then we're we can reference this cleaned memory. So now this node, this extraction node, has the history of the conversation, right? So, and then you are outputting either. So you have, two main options. You can either get, output attributes, or you can, define the JSON like that. Okay, these are the generate from the JSON example, whatever. So we're not using it. So here's what we do. Let's say the user message and extract, let's say, account number, This will be the the value, and the account number of the user, something like that. So now if we connect it, so let's connect it to the model here. Let's chat. Let's clean. Hello. It's not gonna extract anything. My name is Eugene. My account number is T. So now it's gonna extract the account number. So as you can see how powerful it is. Okay, and that's it. Like, it's pretty straightforward. So this is like the way you're doing that. This is like this simple way. You can also because like you can do the boolean, you can do the date, you can do the number, so you can specify all the things here. If you want to go fancy, you can build the input JSON schema, and this is what we are, by the way, like doing here, right? So we're saying, okay, so we need to extract the name, which is the string, the first name of the user. We're extracting the email, the user email that the user provided, and the phone, the string. Okay, and these are the parameters that are required, right? You can, yeah, sure. So in the input schema in the JSON, you have a bit more flexibility, but for the most part, you can use the from attribute description, and you can do the same exact thing, because this is the description that is handled by the LLM. So it's also dynamic. So it's going to be smartly identifying and trying to find the information from the user input. And if you're providing the chat memory here, there's going to be a chat memory as a context here. Okay. So let's delete that and let's go to the next one. Question and answer chain. Now, never using it ever. Very, like, not a lot of people use it. In a nutshell, this is kind of the most simplified way for you to connect like RAG to your to chat with documents, right? So you can do the same thing with the agent, but here you would do the vector store retrieval, right? So you would connect like it here, but then you still cannot connect it here because you need to replace it to this, okay? And now you can connect it. So it's like you're basically doing the same thing as you're doing within the agent, right? So you're connecting this, and you just have less kind of flexibility. You have the system prompt and you're good to go. We need to connect it, and that's it. Okay. So this is more for the people that are, I guess, like starting. That was the thing when it first came out, but right now it's almost not necessary. It's again, so if we do sometimes find the use cases for the basic LLM chain, for this kinda no. Okay, so let's actually remove that just so that you know. Let's remove that advanced. Let's go to the sentiment analysis. Now, so the sentiment analysis is very, let's actually go also to the text classifier. Okay, text classifier. So these are like kind of similar. So, like, never use, like, we are using sometimes text classifier and not using the sentiment analysis. Like, technically, because like you need to analyze the sentiment of the user, like analyze this the sentiment of the user or what he's saying, and you would basically literally input this like this, and you're specifying, okay, so what type of because by default, as you can see, you have positive, neutral, and negative. Like, you can specify, okay, sentiment, like you can add other like category here, and you have another one. No, so it's not necessarily about sentiment. If you think about this, like, you can do like other things, right? It's saying that, yeah, sure, like, because you can system prompt template, so you're like highly what you need to classify it for, but it's still so. Again, like, you can use just text classifier for that. So yeah, just forget about it. Now, about the text classifier, this one is interesting because the most why it's used for the intent classification, at least within our agency, and this is what we see within all of our like kind of license holders and clients. So here, let's say I'm gonna reference it here. let's say we have multiple agents. Okay, so we have like multi-agent framework, right? So we have the main agent, and then we have like multiple ones. Or let's say we don't even have that. So we have like an empty space. We have 4 different agents. Each agent is, answering and has its own set of tools and is built for like certain thing. How are you, like, you would want to classify the intent of the user, and based on this intent, route the user to different agents. You can do the same thing like about the knowledge base calling. So like, let's say if the user is asking about the product information, you would route it to a separate route. Remember, you would set, let's say here, you would set a metadata like product data in like product information, and here you would specify the filter, right? So you're starting to get it, I think. So you can, based on what the user says here, you can route this user to different things. But how are you going to do that? One way is, this is the custom way, is what we have here, right? So we have an intent classification. So we're saying, hey, this is the user input and this is the chat history. So what you need to classify it by intent, like booking, product info, company, or general. So 4 intents. Choose one, and then, like, because it's the JSON, we're using the switch, and we're saying, okay, if this, like intent, like the output, because this is the JSON, from the JSON, the key, equals product info, we're gonna route it here. If it equals the company info, we're gonna route it here. So it's like, you got this, right? But an alternative to that is literally, and by the way, I would suggest you to use that. So I would suggest you to use the text classifier. So here's what you can say. You can say, here is the user input. Okay, and let's say the input. Let's say that we'll use the category. Let's say the general. No, so let's say company info. Run this when the user wants to have information about our company. And let's copy that, add category product info. Okay, about our products, and let's say general. Run this when the user wants to simply talk, something like that. That's basically it. So you would want to use the system prompt template where your goal is to classify the users by categories, whatever. So now, technically, what you can say is, you can connect it here. Route it. Let's remove hi. Is gonna route it to the general. If we say what products you sell, is gonna route it to the product info. And here you can set up the metadata and then call all of them, like, by the way, all of them can route to the same AI agent, right? But here you would have a set field where you would set the metadata. So they will have different this, but they will all be connected to the agent that will be connected then to the to this knowledge base, with this being like metadata being a an expression that is set here. Okay, so this is basically how it is used. It's a very common use case. There are a lot of people are using this text classifier. Yeah, sure, you can build it custom through the intent through the text classification node, information extractor. But yeah, so this could be it. Now, the last one within the main category is the summarization chain. Never used ever. Like, honestly, like, never used it ever. I don't even think that I know what it's doing. Use node input JSON. So probably it's summarizing it's chunking. So it's chunking the text into like is a summary through the chain, whatever. But when we need to summarize something, we're just using the OpenAI message model, right? And sure, as I was saying, right, within the general basic LLM chain, maybe there is a use case when you need to summarize it in a certain format and you need to do like a chaining, some type of the thing. But yeah, so usually it is not needed. Now, I think that this is it for all the general AI nodes within the N8N. Sure, you also have the other AI nodes, but they are used in relation with other tools and main nodes, right? So for example, like the tools, there is like a separate category for that, but you're usually using the tools when you are dealing with the agent step, if you're building the actual agent, right? So you do not necessarily need to explore this tab. You have like different language models here, and this is like what we have here. So this is just there for you to kind of check it out. But again, keep in mind, shiny object syndrome, you need to put it away. As I said, if this video will get 300 likes, next week, I will create a detailed video on going and building conversational agent from scratch, going through each and every node that you need to know. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Peace.